Hello, everybody. Welcome to NKU SOTA's Conversation with Kev. Today I have with me Andy Au and Jennifer Purdum, two people that I've admired for a while, actually over 20 years. They are both professors of art, and they'll talk a little bit about that. And why don't you guys introduce yourselves?
So my name's Andy Au. So I teach at Miami University Regionals at the Middletown campus and the Hamilton campus. I started there in 2006. Before that, I was University of New Orleans for 2 years. I primarily teach printmaking and foundation. So we teach design and composition, color theory, technical drawing, observational drawing, things like that.
Hi, I'm Jen Purdum. I'm also a professor of art at Miami University Regionals. I'm an assistant teaching professor, so my load is more teaching over research. I teach primarily foundations, figure drawing, color theory, a little bit of painting, drawing, observational drawing.
I'll tell you one thing. Those students sure are lucky. I remember when I was in school, Jen, and you were an undergrad, I was always trying to sit behind you and see what you're up to because you're just so talented and you can draw the figure very well. So I just want people to know that. The world should know that.
Thanks.
Yeah. So talking about our histories, how did you guys become interested in art?
I can remember, I think I was 5 years old when I would say this, 5 years old and Star Wars came out. And my family took me to it and I was just blown away. It was a whole visual world that I was new to, had no idea that ideas like this could exist. And I remember just coming home after that and my parents got me this, it was like a pad of typing paper. And I would just sit there with a pen and try to draw things from memory. Because back in the day, you could see a movie in the theater and that was it. You couldn't watch it, rewatch it. I think I probably saw it 2 or 3 times in the theater. But other than that, I was just trying to draw and recreate these these ideas or these visuals that I'd seen and kind of delve into that world. And that was pretty much it. I was exploring visuals from that point on.
Jen, how about you?
I don't remember not drawing, so I think it was just something I was always good at, so I did it. My grandmother on my father's side was a painter, like a weekend painter, and she bought me my first set of oil pastels and taught me how to use them when I was really young. So I just don't actually remember not being interested in art. But then going to school with you guys at UC was the first time I think I got exposed to actually learning actual techniques and art history and being exposed to that many people in the art world. And that definitely had an influence on wanting to go into academia.
I remember drawing X-Wing fighters fighting TIE.
Yeah.
Andy, I bet you had these battles that you probably all.
I don't know if I still have them, but somewhere I would tape these pieces of typing paper end to end. And I had this long train and there was a battle happening across the whole train. It went on for 10 pages.
So who are some of your artistic heroes? Who are some of your heroes in general?
I'm really into Eastern European printmakers right now. So I think that they've really influenced me. There's been a lot of, it's so hard, right? Because there's a lot of artists that have inspired you over the years. And I could talk about that later, talking about instructors that really had an impact. But I think, seeing the Yuri Anderle show that was put on by the Cincinnati Art Museum was a big influence on me. And reading about Yuri Anderle, he's a Czech printmaker, and he had to travel to Germany to get inks and stuff and come back to the Czech Republic. This is during the Cold War, and I mean, he made it work out of the back of his car, getting supplies and doing it. So it's I don't know, seeing his work and aesthetic and reading about what he did to kind of keep doing what he's doing has been a real influence on me.
Jen, how about you?
I definitely had like a set that were early in school and then now. Like early in school, I really loved Anselm Kiefer and his giant like textural landscapes. But then in grad school, I got exposed to a lot of women artists that started becoming really influential to me. Julie Meritou is probably the most influential on me. I respond a lot to her painterly beginning and then an emphasis on drawing. Like she talks about early on in her career when she was in school trying to erase back through her paintings to get back to the drawings. And I kind of had that same sensibility in my own work where I was sort of pushing my paintings back to the drawings and I've just stayed there ever since. So I think she's a huge influence on me.
Did you guys ever see, I think there's this video of Jim Dine and he's teaching in Germany somewhere and he has the students spend a whole day doing a figure drawing. And at the end of the day, they have to erase the whole thing. And then the next day they do it again. Yeah. They're all like blown away.
Yeah. Cause I can remember like when you were an undergraduate, like you were kind of like painting was always, like you would find interesting things to draw with, like pieces of clay that you would dip in paint. And like, so it was like this, it's very process oriented. Yeah.
I think I've always had that crossover between printmaking and painting.
Yeah.
And that just became that world, like collaging, drawing, printmaking,
building up
and constructing. Yeah. I think it still really like goes back to my painting techniques, but I think they pull through different mediums.
Yeah.
What are some of your favorite quotes and how do they govern your life?
I don't know if I have like favorite quotes. I have like words of wisdom. I don't know if you feel like this in academia where like certain professors said things that just stuck in your head and then you find yourself repeating them or carrying them on to like another generation of, but like some that were really impactful for us were, like be willing to pay for two things, like tools and education. So, like tools that help you do your job better and like education of like, how do I figure things out? Quotes would be like, Mark Twain's, I want to be in Cincinnati at the end of the world because it'll get there 10 years later than everywhere else, stuff like that. But I don't know. Can you think of any like things that people have told you that really stuck with you, like advice or?
Yeah, definitely. We always talk about like right before this interview too, we were saying for me, it was in graduate school and my professor, Tim Dowd at American University would always quote, be aware of the particular and the peculiar in your work. Like those are two things that will always succeed and be a great touch point for you. So try to push towards something that's very specific and researched or something odd. And I have a level of absurdism sort of in my work anyways. So I think it's always stayed with me. And I tell my students it all the time.
I'm thinking about like after grad school, like, so we have a lot of students too, like that are asking, like, what is my place in art history? Like, I like this, but I also like that. And, I think after grad school, I told one of the professors that we had, like, well, I feel like I need to be doing something completely different because that was grad school. And they said like, why? And I didn't have a good answer. I was like, oh, maybe I don't. There was just this feeling of like, well, now I'm done with that and I have to do something dramatically different with my work. And I think it's like, why? And it relates to another thing that somebody said of, well, nobody does that anymore, right? Like, nobody does figurative work or nobody does that anymore. It's like, well, they do if you do. Right. The only reason that those things exist is because people do them. So it's like, as long as you're doing that, like, don't let anybody tell you like, you can't, like, nobody's doing that. It's like, well, I am. So I thought that was good advice too.
Yeah. In skateboarding, there was this time where people kept saying vert is dead, vertical skateboarding. Right. And like Tony Hawk, I mean, if anyone can name one skateboarder, it's always Tony Hawk. And it's because he just kept doing it. And people continued on following. And like, he's got a documentary coming out on HBO next week. And I'm sure that's going to blow up. And I like what you said about paying for two things. And lately, I don't know if you guys are experiencing this in your school, but in our school, they want students to graduate as soon as possible. And, I'm for that too. I understand that students, they only have so much money to spend for an education. And I think that I'm kind of an outlier because I took 5.5 years to graduate, but I graduated with 14 extra credits, and they were like heavily all art related. And I think that extra semester paid a huge difference. Like it paid big dividends in my life in terms of like being better prepared. Like we go to school to learn, and like I'm going to pay money to learn more stuff. Like that's
right.
The mentality I had.
I just know, like, okay, the arts are expensive, and it's like musicians will tell you like a quality instrument is worth what you pay for, and like education is the same thing. So it's like, I think the only thing that I would say is like, as a culture, is that we should support the things that we find important. So it's like, you know what I mean? Like if students are having a hard time, we find a way to make it work for them. And I know that's hard, but like, I think that we should fund those things that we do find important. Like educating people is super important.
Yeah. I think I took 6 years to get through school because I had to pay for it myself. So my last year was just taking one class at a time, trying to be able to pay for it. So I actually totally understand the financial restrictions, but I also understand that it was one of the best times of my life still. Like, and not that my life hasn't been wonderful since, but that it's a rare opportunity in your life where everybody who's in your world is there to make you better. But everything about that world is about you. It's about like making your art better, teaching you more stuff. And it doesn't happen again very often where you have that much focus and that much attention on the things that you care about, and everybody around you has the same. So I feel like I always tell my students, like, just appreciate this time, because when it's gone, it's really gone. And you can recreate these in small moments, but it's not the same.
Yeah.
Well said. Yeah. Can you guys describe the environment you like to work in? Can you talk about your making studio behind you?
So yeah, we're at Fuse Press in Cincinnati, Ohio, in the Over the Rhine neighborhood. We bought this place in 2007, I want to say. It was a shell, like nothing behind you was here. There was the ceiling was completely open. There were holes in the floor.
No electrical.
There was no electrical. There was nothing. Like the floors behind you were laid. All the walls are. Anyway, so it was a 5-year project that became a 10-year project because it was just me and Jen working like weekends and summers. The inspector told us, this is a 10,000 hour job to reclaim, to renovate this place, and you divide that by 2 people. That's a lot of hours.
10 years.
But yeah. And I was like, man. So, I mean, like we had some things on like the heating and air conditioning and stuff like that, but everything in here we did. And
several things, several times.
I mean, like around year 7, like we came to like, I was like at my end and I was like, can't do it anymore. And she's like, you got to pull through. And we did, but like now to come here, it takes about an hour, but it's that place where you can go and you're doing your thing. The thing about teaching is that I know that a lot of our students don't have that at home, like a place where, so it's like, we try to make our studios at school that place where they can come. And after, like, it takes a while to like shift into that mental state where you can focus, concentrate, whatever they call it, flow. But like 45 minutes to an hour into it, where it just, you feel at home and you feel like you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. So here is definitely that for me.
And I think it oddly turned out well in terms of the way we work together, because we don't actually collaborate except on Fuse projects. So if we have artists come here, we work together with them. But in terms of our own practice, like I'm on the 2nd floor, Andy's on the 1st floor, and we actually both love to work together, but not in the same space.
Right.
So it's kind of perfect because we do like the energy of being here together, but we're just quietly working in our own space. And occasionally someone will be like, hey, can I get your opinion on something? Or,
Yeah.
But it's
perfect. Do you guys have a bell, or do you use Morse code or something?
Our studio is small. We can just be like, hey, you got a minute? Yeah.
Yeah. So what would you guys like people to know about you, or what would you like the world know about you and your artwork?
That's kind of like a tough question, because it's like, I never think about, I think about going to the art library up at UC. And one of my favorite things was, well, we've talked about this. One of our favorite things was to go in there and just peruse through and find books. And if like you go into any bookstore and it's like, you're going to find books on Da Vinci and Michelangelo, like the same, the same people over and over and over again. Like I was a fan of Salvador Dali, but it's like, if I see one more Salvador Dali book, I'm just going to but finding those books of like people who are doing super interesting things you had no idea about. And, like these Eastern Europeans, it's like, I'm trying to track down these books that it's like, I can't even read because they're in like Czech and Ukrainian, but it's like, I'm hunting these things down because it's this whole world that you kind of discover. So I would love to be that to the world, like a niche, a little niche thing that somebody finds and is like, whoa, I didn't know this crazy dude was doing this stuff in the world. And I don't know. And do you want to talk about Yeah,
I was going to say that it's two questions for us. It's always, there's the question of our work, but then there's the question of Fuse Press. And I think they're two different things. Yeah. So definitely like Fuse, I feel like we want Fuse to be a place where artists can come, whether they're in printmaking or not. Like the current artists that are coming are musicians from Berlin who happen to make prints. Mm-hmm. And I'm working with Queen City Clay people and trying to work out collaborations between Fuse and them. So I think for me, in terms of Fuse, I want to be a place where we can converge practices and be sort of an overlapping place in our overlapping interests. Like
Jen's talked about this necessity for experimental labs. Scientists have labs where they experiment, and to use our studio as an experimental lab. Like the thing that she did with Queen City Clay was great, because she had 3 ceramicists come, and they were silk screening glazes onto paper that'll then get transferred to ceramic pieces. And just listening to them was great, because they were really oh, this is what we want our life to be, is about creative problem solving and learning new things. And so that's a big part of what we want to do here too. So
we didn't even realize that we had so much overlap between ceramics and printmaking, but a lot of our terminology, some of our materials, there was a lot of overlap. Yeah. So it was like a fascinating school moment, really. It felt like school again, where we had a problem we had to try to solve together. And there was energy in it, because nobody really knew exactly what was going to work and what wasn't. That's kind of what I want Fuse to be in the world.
Yeah. Could you tell us a little bit how you guys came up with the idea of Fuse Press and the conversations you had to get it off the ground?
I mean, the concept, or branding, or any of it.
Anything that you guys want to talk about.
So the name actually, the first press that we got, it had an actual fuse in it, the old style fuse. But it's also this idea of fusing to combining things,
sparking,
those types of references. So, and the logo is it's like a roller, but it's also the electrical symbol for a fuse. And then it has us in the middle. So we kind of thought about those layered things. But when we first started, we did just want this to be our studio. But over the 10 years as we're building it out, we're just having a kitchen, bathroom, and a place to stay. It's we can invite people to come and stay and work here. So I think the residency idea started about 6 years ago, 7 years ago, maybe.
Yeah.
So, but it was just this evolving process. I don't know if it was,
We had 10 years to work.
Yeah, we had 10 years to like think about it.
Was that before or after the plumbing was in for the bedroom?
I don't know.
I'm not sure about that one.
But yeah, like I think over time, it's just become an opportunity. And like I've told other people this, like we have these sort of mission statements, but in truth, it comes down to like, we just want to do cool stuff with cool people.
Yeah.
That's kind of it.
That's it. I mean, yeah. That's it. Like we tell students, it's like find your people wherever they are, you know, like find the people who are interested in doing things that you're interested in doing, you know, like, I mean, skateboarding is a great analogy. It's like whenever you find that in your life and you're just like, oh my gosh, these are my people and we're doing stuff and hanging out and having a good time. That means a lot. And it's hard too, because it's like this place did not just fall out of the sky. And I think whenever we bring students here, they're like, oh, that just you guys just had that or you lucked into it. And it's like, no, it was 10 years of backbreaking. And like you had to put other things off. Like we were doing artwork
wherever we could. For those 10 years, it was, it's fine. It's just juggling a lot. So it's 10 years that you invest in something. So. And we invested a lot more at that time in this place than necessarily our own work.
Yes.
Because this was kind of like one of our biggest projects.
Right.
One.
Yeah.
Yeah. I bet it's probably one of the projects you're most proud of too.
Yes. Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Yeah. we both love real estate. So we also kind of are always scheming for like the next big project. So
Yeah. So what are some of your favorite things? Whether it's art or things like food or music?
I am big into music. So, and I think I've always been, so I can still remember an undergraduate, like my roommate, my sophomore, junior year, I came in and he had like this amazing setup with synthesizers and sequencers. And I was just like, I loved it. So it's like, I've always kind of been interested in music and making music. And I've bought and sold so much music gear over the years. And so one thing that's kind of cool is like Jen was saying, the artist coming in May, he's a musical artist that I just contacted on Facebook, and I was like, I actually love him for his music, and he also does visual work equally as well. And he said yes. And then we've got another. I contacted another musician because I was like, oh my gosh, this worked. And I contacted somebody else up in Canada and she said yes. So I'm super into music, and I'm trying to plan these musical events at the same time as the art events. And I love it, but anyway, I don't know. Those are some of my favorite things.
Yeah. I really do like the musical element, but on my own, I think it's I love to read, especially historical fiction. I kind of read obsessively. Andy buys me books like every month. So I love Donna Tartt. I don't know if anybody knows her, but she wrote The Goldfinch and The Secret History. She's really epic in her literature. She's well researched, and she takes years to think through her ideas. Like usually it's 5 years before her next book comes out. Mm-hmm. And I think I love that it's almost like Dickens in a way. It's really like epic. They tend to roll into each other, and there's these worlds that collide with the next world, and then it all kind of wraps up at the end, kind of in a Charles Dickens kind of way. So I love that. And at the moment too, I'm doing a lot with clay. Like I'm learning how to throw, and I'm really bad at it. So it's not something that I'm very good at, but I love being a student again. And it's brought me into contact with like Queen City Clay and other people who are doing what we're doing, where they started their own studio, and it's amazing studio, and they're bringing artist residents in. And so that, I think that passion for just like learning and being a student is really important to continue doing. So even if you're really bad at it.
Yeah. And Jen is way more cultured than I am. Like she reads a ton of it. Like I read one book and it takes me forever because I have an internal narrator that I have to hear and she'll finish 10 books in the time that I read maybe half a book. So she reads a lot and she's always she's got a succulent collection and plants and fine food. It's I wouldn't have any good food in my life without Jen. So yeah, she's yeah, you're all over the place with stuff that you're into. Yeah.
Well, that's great. Yeah. So one of my favorite things is looking at some of your art. So Jen, are there some specific pieces you would like us to talk about or that you want to talk about?
This is actually great. This is a huge piece. It's it kind of relates to the one that's also on the wall right there.
Oh yeah! Wow, look at that! I don't even have to pay for a camera guy over.
So
I can go over for scale reference.
Yeah, and that's half the size of the one you're looking at.
Yeah. Oh, so the one on screen.
So the one on screen is bigger.
Yeah.
So they're collages that I've been building. So I've been a drawing painterly kind of artist, but once we got this space, I really wanted to make the biggest collages that I could. So these are 5 foot by 7 foot or something, and they're just magazine and tape. And then what?
The Gorilla Tape.
Oh yeah, I love Gorilla Tape. This is a passion. Everything's made of. It's really clear. It lasts forever. But anyways, I started collecting a lot of my architecture books because I'm really into architecture. I didn't study architecture, but my work has always been in that place where the built world and place has always been important to me. Mm-hmm. So I've had quite a few of those magazines just laying around, and I'm sort of into detritus anyways in my work. So it just kind of became natural to start ripping up these images. And this one came into play by removing most of the architecture. So in this piece, there's sort of these ghost holes that are the shape of houses that are out. So they've been taken away. There's only one ruin left in the middle. So the green ones have been about that idea of sort of removing us from the landscape, the environment, or at least trying, and the hubris of that, it's not even possible. And then I'm hermetically sealing these things in tape. So it's also kind of pessimistic in terms of my what I think is going to actually happen. So I think they're about that idea of wanting to try to make the right decisions and try to build places around us that are successful and sustainable. And I also think they're about that inability to do that. So,
without seeing them in detail, they remind me a little bit about several years ago. I saw this documentary on Chernobyl and the wolves and the moose and things that back into the area, and all of the architecture was post-apocalyptic. There were trees growing out of buildings and so this kind of reminds me of that. And I think I think you've touched on something in terms of the weeds and the plants are going to continue to just keep going, and our buildings might end up in ruins, and the nature will overtake everything again at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's just things in terms of the tape, the tape is going to outlast the imagery. So eventually the magazine's going to completely turn to vinegar because when you seal it, it seals into its acids. And eventually the light's going to bleach out the image, and eventually it'll be just tape.
Wow.
Yeah. I remember.
What is this thing?
Yeah, they're not very optimistic.
I remember there was we went to go see Fred Tomaselli at the Hirshhorn when we lived in DC, and he would do these things that were sealed under, was it a resin? But anyway, some of them were archival and others weren't, and he would have hidden things in it that as sun hit it, these things would reveal themselves that you wouldn't see until that time. So yeah, so Jen is very specific about like the tape that she uses, and it's gonna, like, I also think about like the Starn twins, like they just let things kind of like if they corrode and they age, that's the way that it is. It's like anything else in life. So
yeah.
And the fact that I think they're kind of about excess.
Yeah.
And then also that I see tape as this like Midwestern attempt at like trying to
fixing
fix
everything. Yeah. Yep.
It's in all of our
it's the red green. It's the red green, like duct tape everything together kind of thing.
So I think it also kind of speaks to my own history of like being truly a Midwesterner. So the big pieces, I've been making some smaller pieces, and you can kind of see the detail of the ripping and the texture and the buildup. These are the same series, but this is more about culture. So this is the Hiorot series. So this one's not based in nature, but more on just man-made culture things. But you can kind of see the detail a little bit better. And the tape's starting to become more important. So the transparent places are literally just tape. So a lot of these are seen through to the paper behind.
And about your sanding?
Oh yeah, and I'm sort of sanding them from behind. Like I'm taking an orbital to the back of the collages to kind of pull back through.
So it kind of relates to what you're saying about like doing the drawing and then erasure and letting things, yeah.
So these are yeah, you
that
can
one's
kind of
really nice. Mm-hmm.
Thanks. And then, like this one's called the Ninth Ward because I still kind of think about our time after Katrina. It was pretty impactful on both of us, I think,
Orleans,
especially on our aesthetic.
Yeah, you guys had to leave New Orleans, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we didn't have to, but like we were done. Like we were there for 1 year before and 1 year after, and it was hard.
Yeah. So, yeah, we were definitely done after that.
Mm-hmm. So, and I think like her work is really interesting because even though these are like collage, they're very painterly and they're very textural and they're poetic and layered.
Some of it reminds me, with the fact that you've erased some of it, it reminds me a little bit of like when you see really old buildings and you see the wallpaper on the wall and it's like there's remnants of it there, but it's not all there.
Yeah, that's totally what I was thinking about. And sort of a diseased mind. I was kind of thinking of a diseased mind making these sort of what's left over of our culture. But these are, at least you can kind of see some of the detail of what I'm doing.
Oh, yeah.
So sorry, there will be like a lot of other stuff on here. So recent stuff that I'm working on is this is a series of works. So these are etching in silkscreen. And I'm really looking at the Eastern European printmakers. I've actually, like with the stuff happening in Ukraine right now, I contacted, like one of them's like I love this guy. I think he's one of like the best, printmakers. He's Ukrainian. And I contacted him out of the blue during this because I was just like, is there anything that I can do? And like, he wrote back and he's like, thank you for considering. He fled with his family to Bulgaria. But anyway, like this whole region of Ukraine, Czech Republic, this strong printmaking history, they get such amazing detail out of these like small, like these plates are probably like 12 by 18 and they're doing this amount of detail in like a quarter of the size. But anyway, like this whole series is strongly influenced by Eastern Europeans. They're very political. I think, whenever we lived in DC, I was never really interested in political work until we lived in DC. And then you realize how so many things are, like, people say like, well, I'm not political. Well, everything, like there's politics in everything, right? So a lot of these are like politically based and they kind of reference like an earlier series I did in 2005. So they're kind of like a second, I tend to work in series, and these are kind of like a second take at that series. It's the first time I've done that, but
and these are intaglio plates with screen printing.
Yeah, with screen printing on top. So like in the middle, that's a etching, and the border and some of the noise is done with screen printing. And they have titles like, like Cry Havoc, which comes from the Cry Havoc, Let Loose the Dogs of War. Just kind of feeling the sense of like where we are politically with ramping up. You can see what's happening in Europe, and there's like a lot of like really strong countries looking for like strong men to lead them at this time. This one is a Butcher of Reason, where I don't know if I have to explain it or not, but it's kind of like this I don't know, like this horrible thing that's ready to like just separate you from your reason. And this is one that like, so I had to do it's almost like a colloquium, but it's not really. It was like a 5-minute faculty overview of what you're doing with your work. This is a piece that I brought up, and it's like, I'm really conflicted about this current series that I'm on because they are political, and I'm okay with the ramifications if people say like, I don't agree with you, that's totally fine. But I'm finding this weird place where we are, where a lot of my work is it's supposed to be serious, funny, or like absurd, but then like done in a way that it's like, oh, well, this, like somebody spent a lot of time on this, kind of like old political cartoons or whatever. This one is called American Ronin. And it's this whole idea of like, we've got a lot of, especially with the January 6th attack on the Capitol, a lot of these were like, post-military or, or law enforcement. So Ronin is this idea of like the people who worked for the shogun or the samurai. Yeah, samurai. And then like whenever the samurai is not there, the Ronin are the hired people, like they're leaderless. So it's kind of doing this a commentary on that. But then the flip side of this is like people don't see it as critical or absurd, but they say like, oh yeah, that's really cool. Like we need to, you know what I mean? So it's like this weird, like where you might be trying to make a point, and I feel like I don't know, like I'm not.
Absurdity is hard in a society that's absurd.
Yeah. So anyway, like this one is like spoiled by privilege, and kind of this idea of like, I don't know. It's like, I feel spoiled by privilege. Tyranny for you. So kind of thinking about like monuments and some of the stuff that's been going on with like taking down monuments. What do the monuments represent? Who are they for? That type of thing. So that's those. I've got 5 done. The last 3 are getting done. But that's where I'm at. So it's like I go through these phases where I do political work, and it seems like I shift between political work and then really sci-fi stuff that's like, what's going to end us first? Is it going to be aliens coming down, or are we going to end ourselves first?
Yeah.
So
I know.
I kind of shift back and forth between those two.
I think it's a point of agreement that we both have, though, is our level of not being optimists for the human race. So
yeah. So
at the same time. Oh, go ahead.
Your older work seems like if we aren't around anymore, people think artifacts are so bizarre and weird, and it's like that you're almost your own society or culture that has made your own work, which I always like that when I see somebody that makes work that looks like it was done in a different time or a completely different culture. And when I look at your work in that vein, especially like some of those like alien hybrid things that you were making years ago, those always kind of like, they seem so exact. It's almost like it was like when we look at botany illustrations from the 19th century, but here we have these like bizarre
mechanical, weird,
like, oh, this really did happen,
Yeah. So that's a weird thing too, is like, like whenever I'm making work, I'm always like thinking of this series of like putting on a cap that like okay, like Star Wars is a good example. Whenever you step into the world of Star Wars, all the artifacts of that feel like they're from that world. So whoever designed that or whatever. So like whenever I'm doing that, I always feel like I'm stepping into, there's always like a narrative to the series, and it's not written out, but it's just like something that I read or something that was said. And I like kind of create this world that these things exist. And it may be not me, but some artist did this in that world, if that makes sense. I know it's kind of bizarre, but yeah, it's like, yeah, that what you said makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we get to, as artists, we get to make our own worlds. And I think that that's kind of what you're doing. You're making things from this. I mean, it's your world, but it's this other science fiction world that plays commentary on political things that have been happening. And probably the last president really gave you a lot of it's like probably a lot of energy to make work, right?
I don't like at the core, I'm like, oh man, maybe I don't want to be doing political work, but like it strikes a nerve with me and I do it. So yeah, I will say this is like the older you get, like you kind of worry about being like too opinionated or preachy because you could be wrong. Like I've been wrong in the past, but like then another part of it is like express your views. So don't be afraid to express your views and make them known. I don't know. So I still have that internal dialogue a lot of the time, like whether to or not, or just shut up and I don't know, do something else. So yeah.
No, we need your voice out there. We need your voice.
Okay. Yeah.
So lastly, do you guys have some favorite teachers that you'd like to give a shout out to, or some people that have inspired you along the way?
I mean, I feel like actually the three of us have interesting history because we were all at UC at the same time. And Andy and I talk about all the time, actually, that we were in a really special place at UC. Every one of, like, if you look at our peers, they're kind of everywhere right now in Cincinnati and beyond. So I do feel like we might share some. So Frank Herman was a really important professor at UC. And then oddly enough, I'd never had Denise, and I never had a studio professor that was a woman. So when I went to American in Italy, I had like a different female professor come to my studio almost every 2 weeks. So there was like Margaret Grimes, there was
Judy Sutherland
and Lori
Parks. Yep.
So there were all these women that were kind of in the visual arts and the studio arts. And it was the first time I'd had any kind of female voice in my studio. And it made a massive difference to be talking directly. Whereas I realized I was having really indirect conversations with a lot of my male professors, which is fine, right? Like I like the experience, and I really like Tim Dowd is a really important professor from American, but I think that experience of having a female voice in my studio in general was like super important to me.
And for me, it's, I would say that, my high school art teacher was probably like the most influential, Terry Rotruk. He would take us to, I grew up in a very small town in West Virginia. It was probably like, I want to say like 2 hours from Washington, D.C. And every year he would rent this whole Greyhound and fill it full of students. And we would go for a full day of art at Washington, D.C. We would leave at like 5 a.m. and get back at 11 at night. But it was important enough for him to do that every single year and get to see. And it really exposed me to so much stuff that I was like, wow, here's buildings where they put things that people have done. That it's like, they're saying it's important, what I'm interested in. And I think that was really huge. And he would show like a lot of slides, and, like I can still remember, like I talked about Salvador Dali before. But like, I can remember seeing my first Salvador Dali slide, and I was like, whoa, what is this? Like, this is crazy. I didn't know, those little things. And as a professor, like I don't know, like sometimes you can question whether you say something to a student or not, but it's like, you don't know, like the things that you think might be really important might not matter, but like these little incidental things where you say like, oh, we should check out this artist. It could totally, change their direction and what the types of things they're interested in. So, and then undergraduate was, we didn't even have a printmaking professor, but they got somebody, her name is Cherry Winkle Moore. And she came and taught one printmaking class because I had just done ballpoint pen drawings, and they're like, you should do some prints. And I was like, I have no idea what this is. I didn't know what it was before undergraduate. And she came and taught one class, and I was like, I love this. And that was influential too. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you made a big scene in graduate school. I was like, who is this first year guy, man? He's doing such cool work. Yeah. So, and I
have to say this, it's like, so applying to graduate school at UC, I had no idea what I was doing because like, I sent them my slides. This is back when we had to send the actual slides, carousels, right?
Yeah.
And like, I had just shot work that I'd had from before, and they had all turned yellow, and they're like, oh, we didn't know if it was like a reference to your last name, like the symbol for gold, and you were trying to make them. I was like, no, I just have no idea what I'm doing. And all my slides were going bad and yellowing. So yeah, so grad school was a big wake up call for me. I was like, oh my gosh, all these people know more than me. They asked me on my first day as the second years, and they're like, what kind of paper do you like? And I was like, I don't know, the normal kind, it was something. So yeah.
Yeah. But your passion for making art, just pushed through all of that. And I think that's a testament to your work. So.
Yeah. So that's another quote, like I remember Terrence Corbin would say like, like students would come back and be apologetic and be like, I'm not making work anymore. I'm really sorry. And he's like, it doesn't matter to me. It's less competition for me. He was very matter of fact about it, but it's like if you want to be an artist and do it, every chance you can get. And,
John Stewart too would often say that it was persistence more than talent.
Yeah.
In many, that whoever just sustained,
yep,
they got better.
Keep getting on the horse and just keep doing it over and over again. Yeah. Good skateboarding analogy too.
the one thing I like to kind of piggyback on TC's comment, Terrence Corbin, for those that aren't familiar with the powerhouse that he was as a painter and as a teacher, I always think as an educator myself, like, I hope that most of my students continue to make art, but if they don't, whatever they do, I want them to really go for it, whatever it is.
100%. Yeah.
Be the best.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We feel the same way. It's like, so we were at an opening for our students last night at the regional campuses, and there was a student who said like, she's in my printmaking class and she's like, I hate printmaking. And I was like, that is totally cool. I get that. The thing is like finding that thing that you want to spend 12 hours a day with, and go for it 100%, Yeah. That's it. Like your money will always follow where your heart is. So like, follow your heart and the rest will come.
I sincerely thank you guys for spending some of your Sunday afternoon with me so you guys can get back into the studio and keep working. This is so great. I'm so excited that I got to talk with you guys, and you're an inspiration to me. Both of you guys are, and I want you to keep making work. Yeah. Like, I know that's what you're going to be doing, Yeah.
And thank you for the opportunity, Kevin.
Yeah.
And the $1,000 that you offered.
Are we supposed to edit that out? They are not getting $1,000. They are not getting $1,000.
Can I get you on tape right now, Kevin?
Andy just messed up your entire tape. In one sentence at the end, just blew it.
Thanks, guys.
I'm just kidding. Yeah. Thank you so much for the opportunity, Kevin. Appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. Take care. All right.
Thanks, Kevin.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.